In this video, I will show you how you can create this cool animation using a wonderful add-on and geometry nodes. Please, if you like my tutorial, subscribe to the channel and let's make this animation. First of all, we need to go to Edit, Preferences, and in the Extensions section, search for Discombobulator and install it. Then, from the Add-ons section, activate the Discombobulator add-on. In older versions of Blender, you don't need to download these add-ons, and you can activate the add-on directly from the add-ons section. You can see that I switched to Blender 4.1 and my rendering settings are probably different from yours. I use Blender 4.1 because EEVEE works much faster for me in older versions of Blender. Here you can see the differences in the settings of these two different versions of EEVEE. Well, delete the default cube. Press Shift to go to Mesh and add a torus. Here I would like to change the major radius to 2 and the minor radius to 0.5. Now press Shift again, go to Mesh, and this time click on the Discombobulator. Now here, I change the min taper to 0.2 and the max taper to 0.4. I also change repeat protrusions to 2. This option specifies the number of sci-fi objects that this plugin will create from objects such as torus or cube. But also, the more we increase the number of repeats, the more details will be added to the object. Delete the torus. And you can see, as I said, the plugin created 2 objects for us, but the second object has more details. Select this object, press S to scale, and type 0.44. Now add a text. Then go to Object Data Properties, and set horizontal to center and vertical to middle. I also like to use a font called Impact Regular, but you can use any font you like. Scale the text and then extrude it. I also press Tab, go to Edit Mode and change the text to blend. Now press Shift again and this time add any object you like. Go to the Geometry Nodes workspace and click on New. Delete the Group Input node and add an icosphere. And connect the mesh to the geometry. Then change Subdivision to 2. Add a dual mesh node to have this sci-fi look on our object. Add a Split Edges node and then add a Scale Elements node. Now, if I reduce the scale, you can see that the faces of the object are scaled separately, and this is because we used the Split Edges node. Well, now add an Extrude Mesh node, and change the offset to -0.02. Add a separate geometry and then add a Transform Geometry node. Now we can add a noise texture, change its type to 4D so that we can animate it, and connect the factor to the selection. I now select this W and type #frame/120. This is actually a driver to animate the texture, but if I play the animation, you can see that nothing happens. We can use a Map Range node. Change from max value to 3, to max value to 1.1, and to min value to -0.1. And you can see that it works. Now I change the scale values in Transform Geometry to 0.3 for now, but we will animate it later. Now let's go back to the layout, and before we add materials to our objects, let's animate the objects we created with the help of drivers and keyframes. I select this object first, go to Object Properties, and click on Z Rotation and type #frame/-80. Now I select this object and click on Z Rotation again, and this time I type #frame/50. Now I select this object. I go back to the Geometry Nodes section and go back to Frame 1. Right-click here and click on Insert Keyframes. Now I go to Frame 150, change the scale values to 0.35 and click on Insert Keyframes. We can click Transform Geometry to see the keyframes in the timeline. Press it to select all keyframes, Then press T and change the interpolation type to linear. If we select the text and go to Object Data Properties, we can find character spacing here, which by changing its value, the letters of this text will be spaced. So I add some keyframes to this to make the animation more cool. Now we want to add material to our objects. First, I select this sci-fi object and create a new material for it. Make it metallic, then make the base color darker and reduce the roughness. Add an image texture, and before we do anything else, make sure you have activated the Node Wrangler add-on. Click on Open, and open the texture that I have put the link in the description for you. Connect color to normal and press Ctrl-Shift left click to see how our texture looks like. Then select the texture and press Ctrl-T. Connect generated to vector. Change Z rotation to 90 and scale values to 3. Now add a bump node and place it here. Connect color to height and BSDF to surface. Reduce the strength to 0.1. Now select this mapping node and press Ctrl-Shift-D to duplicate it. Then connect the object to the vector and return the scale values to 1. Change the X and Z rotation to 100 and this time, add a Verneuil texture. Connect vector to vector and add a color ramp. Connect distance to factor and press Ctrl-Shift left click to see how our texture looks like. Set the texture type to 4D and then move the black handle closer to the white handle. Set the distance metric to Chebyshev and set the scale to 7. Then add a mix color and set the blending mode to color. Increase the factor, and now if I change the color of B, you can see that the color of the texture changes as well. Connect result to color and connect BSDF to surface, but you can see that nothing happens, and this is because we have to increase the emission strength. Click on this W value, which has Verneuil texture, and then type #frame/120 to animate these lights. Hide these objects to see what's going on and go back to the Geometry node's workspace. Add a Set Material node, and then create a new material. Here we have to specify which material we want to be the material of the object we made with Geometry nodes. Go to Layout again and this time I add a simple material to the object. Select this text and create a new material for it. Set the surface material to emission. And change the emission color to any color you like. I like it to be blue. And finally increase the emission strength. Go to Render Settings, and here turn on Bloom to have this glow effect. If you don't see Bloom option here, it's because in Blender 4.2, Bloom has moved to the compositing section, and you should use the glare node in the compositing section. Go to Render Mode, and select this light. Go to Object Data Properties, and change the light type to Sun and set the strength to 2. Change the light color to blue and then set the background color to black. In the Rendering Settings section, set the View Transform to Filmic, and I also like to switch my look to medium high contrast. Now add a point light, and move it a little. Then increase the power of the light a little and change its color to an orange color. Press Shift-D to duplicate the light, and move the light in the X-axis. this time changing the color of the light to red. Press Shift A, go to Mesh and add a cube and scale it. Go to the shader editor and create a new material for it. Remove the principled BSDF and add a principled volume. Connect volume to volume. Reduce the density to 0.1 and change the color to blue. Now I select the camera and go to the camera view. Then I set the rotation and location of the camera to 0 in all axes, and only change it to 5 in the Z-axis. But we can't see anything because of the cube, so select the cube and in the Port Display tab, change Display as to Bounds. Now select the camera again, go to the Camera tab, and increase the Passepartout to 1 to see only the inside of the camera. Now go to Frame 1 and place the mouse cursor here, and right-click and click on Insert Keyframes. Go to frame 150 and change the Z-axis location to 2 and right-click again and click Insert Keyframes. Now select these two keyframes, press T and set the interpolation type to linear. I want a little more contrast, so I change my look to very high contrast. Now turn on the motion blur, and before we render the scene, I must say that 64 samples is too much to render this scene, and I think only 16 samples should be enough. So now render the scene, and yes, as you can see, this rendering looks very cool, but we can make this scene even better through compositing. Go to the compositing section and activate the Use Nodes checkbox. Add a viewer and connect image to image. Add a glare node and play with its settings to get the desired result. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.